As most of you might not know, I have a background in engineering. When I say background, I mean educational background. And I have quite a fascination with military grade aircrafts. So today I'll be looking into a video from Business Insider that looks into a military base of the United States Air Force, which basically refurbishes and maintains old aircrafts. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
The 309th AMARG stores the world's largest collection of military aircraft here in the Arizona desert.
I like to call this the ugliest plane out here, the YC-14. It was an aircraft that never went into...
I don't think this aircraft ever went into production. I think it's an experimental design, and the two engines in the front were used to, give it a easier takeoff.
production.
800 mechanics work nonstop, reclaiming critical parts and regenerating aircraft so they can go back into service.
Yeah, given how expensive each aircraft is, I guess they could average around a couple of millions, and the B-2, for example, goes up to $2 billion per pop. So it makes sense that the US Air Force would recycle old aircraft, refurbish them or cannibalize old parts to add to existing aircraft.
I can't just pull over an airplane like you can a car, and we have to make sure that these aircraft are safe to fly.
Yeah, when it comes to cars, it's like on the ground per se. Let's say a car breaks down in the middle of the road. Worst case scenario, it's going to be a standard accident. Nothing bad's going to happen. Meanwhile, an aircraft, if it breaks down mid-flight, I bet you at the bottom that the pilot's going to suffer. So when it comes to aircraft maintenance, there's a high level of precision required when compared to, let's say, car maintenance.
Our goal is not to be like a cemetery for the aircraft.
That's Colonel Barnard. She's served 25 years as a U.S. Air Force aircraft maintenance officer.
As a commander here, I am in charge of the whole operation. The assets stored here are worth somewhere between $34 and $35 billion.
Yeah, it may seem like a big number, but once you consider the value of each aircraft and the number of aircrafts present in this airbase, I don't know what else to call it, it adds up.
If you were to try to replace them all. It's a big number.
She took us inside this massive facility to see how these military planes get a second chance at life. AMARG got its...
Wait a minute. Yeah, the aircrafts present here, I think most of them are not in active duty. From what I remember, they're US Navy carrier-based aircraft. So, and I think these are currently obsolete when it comes to the current US Navy aviation military doctrine. Let's see.
AMARG got its start back in 1946. After World War II, the Army needed a place to store old planes. They chose Davis-Monthan Air Force Base.
Okay, when they say Army, back then and during World War II, the Air Force was part of the Army. It was known as the Army Air Corps. And this is for the Americans, not for the British. So that's why it was the Army that was searching for a base to store old aircraft, not the Air Force, because the Air Force as a separate branch did not exist.
Here in Tucson, with nearly 2,000 football fields worth of open desert, there was plenty of space.
We're known worldwide as the Boneyard. Our guys take pride in being Boneyard Wranglers.
Arizona has the perfect weather for storing these assets.
Yeah, from what I've heard, Arizona's pretty dry, and when it comes to storing aircraft, you don't want a damp climate, because once the dampness gets inside, it'll lead to all sorts of complications.
It's hot, there's little rainfall, no humidity, and the soil?
That's as hard as concrete.
Okay, as I said, and there's something about the soil, let's watch.
So planes won't sink.
I never really thought of that. That's interesting.
Dryness as well as the lack of acidity in the soil prevent corrosion on the assets.
Aircraft come here from the Department of Defense.
Okay, you see these white layers on top of the place where the windows are supposed to be? Those are reflective layers to make sure that the inside doesn't get stuffy, due to the heat. If any of you guys are from a hot place and you get into a car after parking it in a hot place, you know how it feels. Now imagine that. But instead of the car being in a hot place for, let's say, a few hours or a few days, it's out there for a couple of months or years. So you need these reflective layers to keep the inside safe.
Military, other government agencies, and foreign allies.
We have about 3,100 airplanes. The planes are mostly military. They come from the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, and the Marines. We have over 80 different types of airplanes here.
Oh, that they have they have quite a lot of F-15s. C-135, okay, makes sense. Now, C-135s are transport planes used by the US Air Force. And B-52s, these are strategic bombers which have been used since the early days of the Cold War.
Planes and helicopters arrive and are lined up in sections.
So we're
Okay, that's an A-10. Is that an A-10?
driving down display row here, or celebrity row as some people call it. We do have a sense of humor here. That's our stealth aircraft, which is actually just Wonder Woman's jet.
Okay. Yeah, given that these guys basically, on the middle of the desert, it's good to have a sense of humor out
The
there.
LC-130s have skis along with their landing gear so they can land down in Antarctica and support the National Science Foundation all across that continent.
Okay, from what I've heard, this aircraft platform, is quite versatile. They just change the landing gear and you can land it practically anywhere.
Coming up on a NASA aircraft, it's affectionately called the Vomit Comet.
Some aircraft will be here for weeks before they're called back into service. Other aircraft can be here for 50 years.
50 years, that's a lot of
Similar
time.
to this A4 Skyhawk. Each plane goes through a preservation process before it's put in the desert. Those that may fly again are re-preserved every 4 years. They're defueled, then oil is pumped through the engine to preserve it.
The black material that we have on here is the base layer that seals up the aircraft. And then later, as you can see the rest of the aircraft around here, the coats on top are white, and those white coats will reflect the heat, so it better preserves the assets all on the inside of the aircraft.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier.
Like the inside of the C-5A Galaxy.
Inside of the C-5, it's the largest cargo aircraft in the Air Force inventory. I have deployed on these.
One of 6 deployments Colonel Barnard's had to Afghanistan, New Zealand, and Antarctica.
And, okay, from what I've heard, this is like the standard transportation of aircraft when it comes to US troops. Like, think about this, it's huge, so you can transport large number of cargo and troops simultaneously.
And we can fit 3 HH-60 helicopters and a lot of our equipment that we need, as well as all our maintainers. We have just over 60 of them here. And every one of them needs 72 tie downs. Airplanes are designed to fly, and when it gets a little breezy out here, we want to make sure they stay parked.
Yeah, better safe than sorry. I'm not sure about Arizona's wind, but it's better they tie it down.
But not every plane just sits around collecting dust. U.S. military units around the world can request specific parts off these planes.
An aircraft has so many thousands of parts. Just like a reservoir keeps things in case you need them, and then we release what's out of the reservoir as needed.
And some of the parts the military can only find here at AMARG.
We are that assurance that there's a part available.
Okay, this process is generally known as cannibalization in the aerospace community. You take parts from one aircraft and use it to fix another aircraft.
When the supply system main sources don't get it. We send anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 parts out every year, to the tune of a few $1 million each week worth of supply parts.
Yeah, that's a lot. When you think about the US military system, you normally assume that the parts are directly supplied by, let's say, Lockheed Martin or Boeing, but it's surprising for me that they tend to use old stuff as well. Yeah.
Parts. Scott and James here are removing the engines from the back of this T-38 as a reclamation effort because these have been requested to go back into service. So once the crews reclaim the parts out in the desert and bring them into the end of this building, they get washed, they get non-destructive inspection, and they're going to pack and ship these.
Okay, the non-destructive inspection part is extremely important because all it takes is a tiny scratch in any part to bring the aircraft down.
Right out the door as fast as we can.
But sometimes, instead of being used for parts, an entire plane will be regenerated, meaning they'll pull it out of the desert and wash it down.
We have to remove all the coatings that are used to preserve the aircraft out in the desert.
After getting a nice shower, it's fixed up.
What our team is working on here is a C-130 that's being regenerated for foreign military sales. In this hangar, the current
Okay, so they're selling a second aircraft to a foreign military, which is more common than you think. In fact, there were rumors that the Indian Navy was offered a used aircraft carrier of the US Navy along with a couple of F-18s, if I'm correct. The carrier variant, F-18 Growlers. How the US Navy, the Indian Navy opted to buy a second-hand Russian-based carrier, and that led to a couple of complications, which I'm not going to discuss right now. It's a topic for a different video.
project that we're working on is F-16s and post-black repair. It's a package of structural improvements on the aircraft to extend their flyable life.
The unit also handles aircraft modifications.
These aircraft come from U.S. units that are active right now, and then they get some work done on them, and they go back out to that same unit.
Okay, so these, like when they say modifications, it could include upgrades, like tactical upgrades for different type of operations.
We're able to upgrade those and modify them to keep them up with the current standards in the active fleet.
Complicated individual pieces are sent to separate back shops for repair and overhaul. Here in the wing shop,
we have all the center portions of the A-10 wings being rebuilt here and the outer portions being rebuilt there. There's actually hundreds of pieces inside of an aircraft wing. The complexity and the level of structure, it's really eye-opening for many folks. Each set of wings can take up to 20,000 man-hours to overhaul.
Once parts are fixed, they go through a thorough inspection.
We're here in the non-destructive inspection area. Pete's working on a fluorescent dye penetrant.
It's basically a liquid that absorbs into cracks, and we can apply a black light to it, and you can see there's a crack right here that shows.
Yeah, this process is extremely important, as I stated earlier. And let's let the expert explain.
This crack right here on this part in the landing gear could cause catastrophic failure on the landing gear.
Not a single
As the expert said,
crack on an entire plane can get past this team.
We have to make sure that these aircraft are safe to fly so that we protect that asset and we protect the aircrew that's inside of that asset. So the stakes are pretty high.
Once it's fixed, the planes go through a rigorous final flight test.
The colonel seems like a really chill commanding officer, not gonna lie.
Pilot Scott Thompson is testing these regenerated F-16s.
Okay, when it comes to test pilots, they tend to be some of the most experienced pilots in the entire service.
Take them out to the airspace just south of here, close enough to where if I do have a problem, I can get back onto the ground immediately and pretty much put them through the ringer. We test flight controls and the handling and the engine performance and all the systems on the plane pretty extensively at all altitudes.
They go out to become full-scale aerial targets.
That's a happy ending for a plane pulled from the desert here at AMARG. But for other aircraft, this is the end of the line. The planes marked with a big D go through pre-demilitarization and then are destroyed by a third-party contractor.
So these are guys that work the D-mill and they prepare aircraft for disposal. Well, and I will get out of the way of the crowbar. Okay. I'm pretty good at destruction too, but you guys are being super careful about it, which you should be.
The planes are demolished for good reason.
To make sure everything's accounted for and that.
To be honest, you don't want civilians getting their hands on some military-grade equipment. Even though, personally, don't quote me on this, I would like to have one. It's better that civilians don't get their hands on these stuff.
The materials and the technology don't fall into the wrong hands.
While some Americans may not have heard of AMARG, it actually saves taxpayers a lot of money.
It's basically reduce and reuse. In a nutshell, reduce, reuse, recycle. In that way, you tend to save a lot of money because you're reusing old assets. So instead of just disposing them, which in turn, reduces taxpayer dollars.
Assets stored here are worth somewhere between $34 and $35 billion. And so to make a new one may not be possible versus to rejuvenate an old one.
Okay, like when it comes to making new aircrafts, a surprising thing, people might ask why the American Air Force doesn't have any more F-22s, which are often considered to be the most technologically sophisticated stealth aircraft of our generation. So the common question is, why does the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Marine Corps move towards F-35, the newer F-35s, which are proven to be inferior to the F-22? That's because the F-22 production line has been shut down by Lockheed Martin. And for them to restart their entire production line, it will cost more than the amount required for them to develop a new aircraft like the F-35. So when you have, let's say, required aircraft in storage and you refurbish them for new missions, you can obtain aircraft that you want, which aren't currently available in the market.
Might be the best case scenario.
But for the workers, it's not just about saving the military some money. It's also about giving these planes another life.
A lot of these airplanes haven't flown for a very long time. I flew a lot of them operationally back in the day. It's great to get back in them and bring them back.
Is that a Sabre? Yeah, it's a pretty old aircraft. It's one of the earliest American jet-based aircraft.
To life.
These airplanes have a lot of stories to tell, and it's wonderful to spend time with them and think about that. There are very few of us military that are lucky enough to be assigned here. It's just a joy to be able to work with these people every day and be around these airplanes.
As a person with an engineering background, I would like to work here, but yeah, I'm not really cut out for military service. And I'm an Indian, so that's a double whammy over here.
Planes.
If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like this, please like, comment and subscribe. Anyway, thank you for watching and have a nice day.